The next speaker that we have here is Iyinoluwa Aboyej. He's one of the most successful African entrepreneurs, and he's going to talk today about Talent City, which is a chain of charter cities focused on creating technology-enabled jobs and managed with free trade zones across Africa. So let's welcome Iyinoluwa. Let's see.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Our pleasure. I'll let the stage to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning into this call. I'm going to make this as brief as I can, because I know I don't have a lot of time, and I'll be super excited to get questions from everyone. So thank you all for coming. Well, I'm just going to start by introducing myself. My name is Aboyeji. I am one of the I'm one of the co-founders of a VC fund called Future Africa, the Fund for Africa's Future. At the Fund for Africa's Future, we back innovators and entrepreneurs that are turning Africa's biggest challenges into business opportunities. My background is an entrepreneur. I came from Waterloo, and I went to University of Waterloo, and from there I moved back to Nigeria to become an entrepreneur. I helped start a business called Andela, which is kind of a lot of what inspired what I'm about to share with you today. So what Andela did was really start a paradigm in the education industry in Africa where people were able to get an education that was actually valuable to them with respect to getting actual jobs. And the way he did it was to identify talented young people across Africa and train them to become software developers. So I helped run that company for a couple of years and then started a second company called Flutterwave. But one of the experiences that I had at Andela was the fact that because of the rapid growth that companies like Andela was having, so tech companies hiring young talent in cities like Lagos, Nigeria, they were having a lot of challenges finding the right kind of infrastructure for enabling these type of high growth companies. And to make matters worse, you know, even though we started in what was considered like a technology cluster, there was no cooperation from the government in terms of enabling us to thrive within these new spaces. And this was a huge barrier. And so one of the things I definitely swore as I left the talent development industry to go build a payments business that's also pretty successful was that I was going to try and solve this problem of creating the perfect infrastructure and society for people to be able to build the right kind of businesses, the right kind of companies, and that was how the idea for Talent City came about. So I'm going to share Talent City vision with you. TINAPA Talent City was essentially created, the idea was basically how do you build a network of charter cities that are optimized for the employment of young people, especially young people working in technology or technology-enabled businesses. And one of the major challenges was basically, you have to be located in a place where you can control all the variables, including real estate, laws, regulation, and things like that. And basically our basic model is, we find a place and then we work with the government to create a concession agreement where we take over some abandoned real estate and then work with the state over a period of 30, 40 years to basically leverage the state to, we bring in private financing and structure. The state contributes the land and the infrastructure. And then we fill up whatever gaps exist together and then invite private developers to come in and situate within the space. The first Talent City is in a very illustrious location known as TINAPA. TINAPA is a legacy for Nigeria for a number of reasons. In the wake of the 2008 financial crisis, right before it actually, Walmart had approached Nigeria. It was a newly democratic government at the time. They had just spent their first term, and the second term, people kind of got a lot more adventurous because most of the reform program had already been started. And then they decided that they were going to put in place they were going to build basically a massive like trade complex for Walmart. And Walmart was in on it, and then 2008 happened. And as is often the case in many developing countries, we were the casualties. And what ended up happening was that, this $70 million investment that the state and the government had put together to satisfy Walmart, basically the investment went to zero. And so what we're trying to do with Talent City is to take over this zone. This zone already has special economic zone rights, so it controls its own immigration. It has the ability to host an offshore bank. It has the ability to incorporate companies that are not subject to Nigerian onshore regulation. It has its own special customs system. And it also has a port next door. And it's close to the city. So as you can see from the map, it's just about, a 5-kilometer radius to the Calabar city center, and about 10-kilometer radius from just 20-minute ride from the airport. So amazing location and already existing infrastructure. I wanted to show you some pictures of. I'd love to show you some pictures of what some of the infrastructure looks like. This is the existing infrastructure as it exists today. You can, I don't know if you can see those pictures, but basically it looks like something out of a sci-fi movie. They had this amazing big plan, but like much of the infrastructure in Africa, it just kind of went to crap. And no one's using it. It's been dormant for the last 14 years. So since 2004, 2007, no one's actually, barely anyone has stepped foot in this place. And this is $70 million of Nigerian taxpayers' money. And so what did we want to do? We worked with the state government to basically say, look, let's work with you on a concession agreement that could really change things for the better. And this is kind of what we have in mind, right? How do you build a new kind of startup society, to kind of borrow from the theme here, that has kind of the right infrastructure in place? So the plan right now is basically taking stock of what's already there without changing much. How would you kind of change the dynamics and create kind of a vibrant city that's very friendly to tech? Basically, like the way I envision it is basically like, how would you build the equivalent of the West Coast in Nigeria? Because the country has 20 million people in Lagos. It has only 8 cities that have over 1 million people. And now what you're trying to do is move economic activity down south so that you can spread the prosperity. And that's basically what we've been very focused on. And Nigeria is an anomaly in that respect, because if you look at other emerging markets like China has similar population, you could argue, right? If you look at the projections, and it has like 140 cities with over 1 million people, right? You look at India has about 50 cities with over 1 million people. You look at, like, they've had an amazing success with like Kantaka and like build Bangalore. And we're looking at those examples and saying to ourselves, what would it take for us to build it? And this is kind of like a brief kind of idea of how we're going to do it. And our city is really, I mean, one of the things that people kind of fail to understand about natural Nigerian architecture is that people love communal spaces, but they never get enough of them. If you've ever been to Lagos, there's just a lot of like, closed spaces. And we want to be revolutionary in the sense that we want this to be a city, especially because this is like a Nigerian taxpayers paid for this. We want it to be an open city. And so we've optimized for that in our infrastructure and in the way that we've, in our architecture, and in the way that we've decided to build things. And we're very proud of that decision. Some of the decisions that we're making basically is, first of all, use up as much of the existing infrastructure as possible. And the amazing thing about the existing infrastructure, I'm just going to quickly go back one step. You see, the place has this 10,000-foot emporiums. I'll show you kind of some pictures. It has this 10,000-foot emporiums, 4 of them that are like 40,000 square meters. Those were supposed to be warehouses. But now we can turn those into, like special types of retail space, and they're very high ceiling. when you go in them, so you can actually turn the office spaces into something really interesting. They have like a waterside wave pool and like waterworks, kind of in like a 330 square meter space. And one of the things that we're imagining there is like, what would happen if you created like a mini Disney there, where families could come on weekends and just experience what a decent city should look like, and what decent government should look like. And obviously we'll put in all the securities and controls, but we do want it to be like an open public space. And then you have like studio space, you have offices, you have hotels and bars, and you have a water bay where that links to the Atlantic. And it's just a beautiful site. And what we want to do is take as much of the existing space as possible and convert it rather than building something new. For us, that's like the major attraction with this space. And then, kind of densify the space. So have the place kind of build out a residential area. One of the disadvantages this place has is that it doesn't have any kind of residential included in the plan. So we're trying to build out some residential, just as the hotel, but build out a little bit of residential to get people kind of living in the area, and then enhance the green infrastructure. And here are some of our project principles. I mean, for us, we're looking at this as a space where people live, work, and play. We're making this a walkable city. So we've been very inspired by the work that some of the folks at Call the Sac are doing in the US. And like our rule is basically like no cars. And we have enough parking spaces outside the city to enforce that. And then, like try as much as possible to kind of mend the social and physical fragments of the city. And then we really don't have the money, and our funding plan doesn't include us building out the entire city. We just want to set out the urban planning developers to come and build what's necessary based on the customer bases that we bring in, and then just kind of have little by little, and then activate public spaces for various uses throughout the year. So Calabar is very famous for something called the Calabar Carnival. It's an amazing festival every December, and we want this to be like the center of that. And Calabar is an amazing cultural place. It's the second largest rainforest in the world after the Amazon. It has a lot of history because this was Nigeria's first capital, and a lot of slave trade monuments still exist there. Special significance, particularly to the African American people, and even to the Christian community. So, for example, it's very famous for being the place where the song "Amazing Grace," the hymn "Amazing Grace" was composed. And we want to make it like activate those public places and link up to all these other cultural and ecological sites. They're very rare apes and gorillas that only exist there, and in a forest that shares a border with that demarcates Nigeria and Cameroon. And we want to get people out there. Then also looking at the street hierarchy and giving more room for pedestrians. I've talked a little bit about that. And then create, different kind of ground floor and key routes. And this is kind of our phased plan. So we have, the idea is to have kind of like a phased plan, and this is like our phase one of the plan. We're really optimizing for lights in terms of where and how we're building. And then looking to have people kind of be able to move around the city. We've zoned the areas. We've spent time to actually explore and zone the areas where it's going to be green, where it's going to be residential, where the studio is going to be, where the leisure park's going to be, where the hotel's going to be, and kind of just organized it for mixed use in a reasonable way. And then, you can kind of see our green infrastructure strategy. We really want this to be a green city where people can kind of lie around on the parks, and it looks like Dolores Park on a good day. And then the urban typology of the place, and we're really optimizing because of the kind of workers that we have. We're really optimizing for quality of life. I think that's like our first and foremost priority. And then kind of like the big development project that we're inviting investors right after we take over the space to do basically would be mixed use and residential development. So looking at things like, just basic urban and farmers market retail, because Calabar has a big farming community. We want to be part of our community. And then just like family units, because we have a lot of people who want to move. And then we have, like mixed use blocks and 1 or 2 bedroom apartments, some athletic stuff and things like that. And really these residential zones are supposed to form kind of like an urban identity for the city and provide opportunities for living and working in post-community. I mean, for me, my rule of thumb is like, if your workplace is 10 minutes away from where you live, like that's not the future, So we really believe in this, especially post-COVID, this company town concept where you live in a place and you work in a place, but like you still have office spaces, but you kind of know everybody you live and work with. I've had the privilege of growing up in one of those company towns. Like I grew up in a shell estate in Warri, which is another coastal town in Nigeria. And it was just an amazing experience because you knew everyone and your father wasn't too far away and they could always come home. There was no traffic and stuff like that. So, we really want to kind of build for that kind of flexibility, both within and outside. And we're also trying to make sure people can see the view. So we've set the maximum building heights at 5 stories, at least for now. And try and build courtyards that improve airflow and things like that. So it's a big part of our design. Then, business and retail is really important. Obviously, what people are coming here to primarily do is work. And, these pictures kind of give a picture of the space and what we want to create out of it. So especially particularly with the emporiums, because they're, 4 open plan, like just huge open plans, 10,000 square meter spaces, super well built. And then they have basements as well. And so we're creating flexible workspace with a lot of social distancing, flexible retail space that can be put up and taken down. We want to create like a farmer's market. Want to create an event space for large conferences and exhibitions. So having like an African version of the CES will be possible in this space. And then obviously there's going to be parking for those who don't live within the city. And apart from that, we don't expect to see a lot of cars. And then obviously, there's a leisure element, and we have a 243-room hotel that would obviously do some work to expand and kind of further develop. But at the back of it, you have kind of this river bay that has some kind of water and leads to the Atlantic, and it's an amazing ride. And so we'll be engaging that as well to do that. And the waterfront is going to be a big kind of experience, public experience for people. We're going to make it public. People can just kind of waltz in and such. And then this is kind of the phase 1 strategic plan that we're pursuing. And right now we're just looking for, the right investors to work with us on funding the concession and enabling us to develop the phase 1 plan. Some people asked about the currency to be used here. Well, the beautiful thing is that in Nigeria, when you're in a special economic zone, you can use any foreign currency. You can also use Naira, but you can use any foreign currency. In Nigeria, the customs area, you're not allowed to use anything but Naira. But in this zone, you can use whatever you like. So there's a real opportunity with respect to like offshore banking plus, community currency plus some kind of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency arrangement, and we'll be excited to actually explore it. And shout out to Jay, because we're working with Jay on the. He's been working with us on kind of the technology for onboarding the double GDP guys, working with us, and I just want to say a big thank you to him because they've been a big source of encouragement and questions for us. Another question I'm seeing is, to boost investment and land values, can we engage Transparency International to show lack of corruption? Well, I mean, yes, but I mean, this is a special economic zone, and a lot of the companies that are going to be here are like tech companies that are scaling really fast. I don't know what Transparency International could do for us there, but it would be an interesting idea to engage them anyways. I've worked with some folks from Transparency International, but always excited to figure that out. I really think that there's a lot of talk about corruption in developing countries, particularly in Nigeria, and the reality is that it's not a big problem here. Like what we're trying to build has been built all over Lagos with little or no drama, right? The only thing is that Lagos is 20 million people, and there's like just 7 other cities with over 1 million people. So imagine what would happen if we took the projects instead of putting another project in Lagos. And there's some in Lagos that are really cool. Like the Rendezvous guys have a city in Lagos called Alaro City. Like, just imagine if we could take that to somewhere else instead of Lagos. And I think that would be a great thing, because I think the real imperative is, how do you take the prosperity we've already seen in Lagos and spread that across the entire country? There's a bigger incentive, bigger thing to do that. There are other projects like this coming up all over the country. There's one that we're in current talks with in Ogun State. There's another one in Ekiti State called the Ekiti Knowledge City. So all sorts of stuff are going on. Nigeria's central bank stance on crypto. Well, the Nigerian central bank has kind of left the space ungoverned. So you have crypto companies in Nigeria. So you have companies like Bitcoins. You have companies like Luno operating in Nigeria. So they've kind of left it ungoverned and just said, buyers beware. And that's basically what it is. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, because the central bank kind of sees crypto as like a very tiny proportion of the country's assets. And they don't like to police it at all. You may get stronger. Well, so basically, like, I agree with that. That's a big point. Now, the way we see the work we do, particularly me, I see it as working for the Nigerian people, just in a more commercial way. So the concession agreement basically is like a 35-year agreement where we pay the government something upfront, and then we agree on some kind of tenement rate over 30 years. Right now, we're talking 10 years upfront, and then 20 years we pay a tenement rate. And we share all tax revenue with the government. So we become a collection agent for the government. And also, we return the asset to them built up in 30 years. So we can't hold on to it forever, but whenever the concession period ends, they get a well-run city with its own CEO, and like everything great. So just like Hong Kong, basically, had with China. And I think that's the best way to kind of structure these agreements with government, because by the time you become super successful, there is nothing to change really. They can like work it, And to be honest, I'm the kind of person that even if I got strung out by the government, I would definitely find a way to take care of my investors, but I wouldn't be pissed because this is really a project that we're building for the Nigerian people, and I want them to get the best benefit out of it. We want to leave strong infrastructure with the government and a template for governance, and build hundreds of these talent cities across Nigeria and make them kind of the standard for governance. Another question. So regular banks in Nigeria will be okay with crypto? Well, I would say if you went to a Nigerian bank and told them you're a crypto company, they would be worried about other things, particularly AML and stuff like that. But basically, like, that's what it is, and you'd have to kind of build trust. But there are crypto companies in Nigeria. And they kind of operate in Nigeria, so we know that's possible. But it would really depend on kind of how much the bank trusts you. Yes, I think that, I really want this. Another reason why we're particular about the government getting back taxes and control in 30 years is that that's the best way to benefit the community. Anything else that you do can be kind of appropriated, but regardless of how weak our democracy is, people can get back their trust because they invested, $70 million of their money into this infrastructure that we're going to build off of. We're not going to be some like tight ass capitalists taking over the whole thing. So for us, it's really important that, that people get their property back. We're just in trust for 30 years and then we give it back. And I love that about the project. Yes, plans for online presence. The way we plan to onboard residents, because a lot of people ask me, like, there's always a trouble with new cities. People want to move there with their friends. They don't want to be alone in a big city. They don't want to live in a ghost town. So the way we're planning to onboard people is to, hopefully in the next couple months while we work with Jay, we're going to have people kind of like on board. They would be able to like apply to live in the city. And when they apply to live in the city, then we would be able to like offer them, we'll offer like a set of 100 at a time, the ability to settle in the city. So that's how we're thinking about it. There was one more question, I think, and then I can get out of here. Smart contracts to ensure community land trust delivers on direct payment citizens. Honestly, the biggest challenge with smart contracts in this part of the world is identity. People don't have identity. People don't have any access to digital identity. So it's very difficult to deliver on that. But I think that perhaps there would be possible ways that once that's built in, there is going to be movement on that. One thing I'll tell you is that in Nigeria, I helped author a bill back in the Corona and built in smart contracts into it. And basically, digital transactions bill, and it basically says like things like smart contracts can happen. And when it's eventually passed, it's going to be amazing for the entire country. My email, I'm going to type it in here, so you can always feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to host delegations. We've hosted Mark Luther from Charter Cities Institute in the city, and he loved it. I don't know if he's on the call. Maybe he can give a thumbs up, but he had a fun time in Calabar because it's a beautiful place, amazing people, and very welcoming people. And I'm happy to host as many of you as want to come. Maybe we even do a Startup Societies conference there sometime soon, when everything is over.
Yeah, we would love that. The project sounds amazing. I love your presentation, Aboyeji. I would really love to visit once this is over. That was great. Thank you very much. I don't know if you have time, but people seem to be very engaged with you here in the chat. Maybe you can do a breakout session after our next speakers or something. Everybody's speaking. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm watching all the presentations, so I'll be happy to do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's time to welcome our next speakers.